Let's talk about microphones. I get a lot of questions about what mic should I use? And it's a very difficult question for me to answer because it depends on a lot of things. It depends on what you're going to use the mic for. It depends on your budget. It depends on how you know how to use what came from the mic. In other words, do you want something that's got a lot of coloration that you can then work with, or do you need something that's basically, what you hear is what your final result is going to be? So I figured it made sense for me to kind of go through, I picked out 7 mics from my mic cabinet. And I thought it made sense to go through these mics one by one, talk a little about the characteristics. I'm going to give you pricing so you kind of get a feel in that regard, but expensive isn't always better. And then at the end, I'm going to do some, we're going to do some playing with it. Last night I recorded about 30 seconds of pretty much the same thing with each of the 7 mics. And I was the same distance from the bell. I adjusted the mic preamp so that each waveform was about the same size. So in other words, the volume was consistent. There were no effects. I didn't do anything to modify the sound. These are completely raw, dry tracks. And after I get done introducing the mics, we're going to go through and I'll do some comparisons. I'm not just going to play each one because, quite frankly, the subtleties of the mics in this regard is difficult because, first of all, I'm recording and then compressing for video, and then I upload to YouTube, and then that's compression, heavy compression. And I do a lot of watching of videos, instructional videos talking about studio techniques and mastering and mixing and all stuff. And I got to tell you, it's sometimes hard to hear what you're being told is an obvious difference because of what happened to that video in between it was made and I'm listening to it. So what I thought would be pretty cool, and I would definitely encourage other makers of these kind of videos to do the same, is I'm going to create a full resolution audio file of this that's not compressed. And I'm going to put a link to it on my welcome letter for my subscription. So here's what I'm asking you to do is subscribe to altobone.com and put your email address in there, and you will then be getting my music feed, and it's a kind of a cool piece of music featuring trombone and electronics every month, and you will get the link to this audio file. So I think, especially when I start to compare them from a sound perspective, that's going to really, I think, get you the closest you're going to get to really hearing the sonic differences within the mics. So first thing I want to do, let me introduce the mics to you, give you a little background on them, and then let's do a little sound comparison. So let's start with the workhorse, the Shure SM58. Now, I never record with this in the studio for my pieces. This is really a vocal mic for live performances. You've seen these 1,000 times on stage. But I figured I would contrast this because when I compare this to the $5,000 Neumann M149, you're going to hear a huge difference. Now the thing about this mic is if you take off the capsule here, what it looks like is the Shure 57, which is the instrumental version of this, which you've probably seen if you're a horn player, you've seen on stage. Now it's a dynamic mic. It's a $100 mic, and that's why it's very popular because it's not a bad mic for $100. But certainly it's not going to compete with the other mics that we have here. And the first one I would say that about is the Sennheiser 441. This is a classic mic. I'm sure you've seen this in recording sessions and even maybe some live things. It's got a 5-position bass roll-off switch, and on the other side it's got a treble boost. And it is also, like the Shure, it is a dynamic mic, but it's interesting. I was on Sennheiser's sales page, and they say it sounds like a condenser mic. So, and to be fair, it is a nice sounding mic for what it is. The price on that, I believe, is somewhere around $1,000. Next one. This is an Audix CX-101. Now this is a cardioid pattern, and we should talk a little about patterns. Patterns, basically, here's a 3D image of what a pattern is. It tells you the proximity of what will get into the mic. There's a diagram of a polar pattern for a cardioid. Cardioid is the most common polar pattern. It's pretty directional. You can get patterns that will capture everything from around the mic. It will be tighter in. There's hypercardioid, there's supercardioid, but this is the basic directional mic. I have a pair of these, and I use these to record Jerry Pagano and Doug Yo in the album we did, Fratris. And you can see there I built a partition between them, and it allowed me to do some editing on each of them without disturbing what was going on the other side. And they both used an Audix CX-101. I wanted to use the same mic, and it was a fairly high-end mic that I had a pair of. This mic I don't think is made anymore. Originally it was about a $500 mic. I think you can pick them up right now used for a couple $100 or less. It's not a bad mic for the price, certainly. Now, Neumann. I'm a big fan of Neumann. This is the TLM 193. And when I did this playing test yesterday, I was really surprised. I haven't played this in a while. It's a good sounding mic. I really like it. This one goes new for about $1,500. Again, hypercardioid, which means fairly directional. There is no other controls. The mics I'm going to show you in a second have more controls to, you can vary the polar pattern. You can have some roll off on the low frequencies. I mentioned the Sennheiser has a boost on the high frequencies. This is a nice mic. Now here's a different type of mic. This is not a dynamic mic or a condenser mic. This is a ribbon mic. This is the Coles ribbon mic. And it's a fairly popular mic. In fact, I played with Nick Fitzer last year, and on stage he had this, and I thought it was pretty cool that the stagehands dug up a Coles ribbon mic. But I've seen videos of him, and it looks like this is his mic. This is his go-to mic, and it is a nice mic. It's a ribbon mic. It's got a super, super thin mic, ribbon that vibrates, and that's kind of how it gets its sound. And I will demonstrate a little bit because it does have a different character than the other mics. All right, this is a Neumann U89. Now we're getting into an expensive mic. This is about $3,500 new. And part of the reason is because it's got a lot of controls. It's got some roll off, it's got different patterns, it's got some different controls in terms of the frequency response. That's going to make it a little pricier mic. If you're just starting out, I don't think you need those things, quite frankly. But it is a nice mic. I like the TLM 193 better in the sound test that I did last night as I was putting all this together. But it is a sweet mic, no doubt. And last but not least is my go-to mic, and the grill is a little bit beat up. You can tell that it's had a little bit of wear and tear. This, again, is a large diaphragm condenser mic. It has several polar patterns on the mic, where you can see 5 polar patterns and then 4 in between. And on the back, it's got some roll off for rumble and low frequency. I absolutely love this mic. I mean, this has been my primary trombone recording mic for probably 25 years. It is my sound. When we talk about large diaphragm condenser mics, which is this and the other Neumann, and even the Audix, and you can see there what the diaphragm looks like. They're not as rigidly accurate as small diaphragm, but it does color the sound a little bit, and I like that. And I do a lot of work after the fact in sculpting what this gave me, but I just like this as a starting point. Okay, let's listen. Now, for this comparison video, I played about 45 seconds of roughly the same notes for each mic. And I'm not going to play all 45 seconds each time. I'm just going to play snippets that kind of demonstrate enough of that particular mic sound. So what I played is basically starting with the pedal E flat, again on an alto. I played the 3 octaves above it. And then I improvised down to the false G, and then I landed back on the pedal E flat. And then the second phrase, I started on low B flat, went all the way up to the high B flat, and went B flat to G. And then what I did is I played that phrase A second time, first time was at fortissimo, second time was at mezzo forte, and third time was at pianissimo. And on each of the mics, I really tried to play as absolutely soft as I could, basically bordering on lip noise, just to kind of pick up the subtleties of each mic. Now, using the Sennheiser 441 as a baseline, here's the full phrase I recorded for each mic. Two quick things before we start. Most of this is very subtle, given what I said earlier about the processing that audio goes through from me playing to the mic, to the video, to YouTube. So use headphones if possible and listen in a quiet environment. And again, if you subscribe to my music series at altobone.com, you'll get the link to the full uncompressed video, audio from this point on the video. You should be able to get a much clearer idea of these mics if you listen to that audio file. Two, again, this is very subjective. All these mics have a personality. Every mic has a personality or a color that they add to your sound. So you should buy a mic that you like, not one that, everybody says is the best or one that's super expensive. If you've gone through my books and I've convinced you that you should be recording yourself to get a better idea of how you sound and how you play, and that's all you want a mic for, then please don't buy an expensive mic. Now, if you're getting into serious recording, then pay more attention to the character of the mics as you decide what to add to your collection. Let's start. And let's start by comparing the Sennheiser, from which I just played through the full take, and the Shure SM58, the $100 mic. Now, these are the two dynamic mics in the collection. Here's the E flat above middle C from the Sennheiser, and then I'm going to play the same note played into the SM58. See how much thinner the Shure sounds, the SM58? And notice on the frequency analyzer that there is some high end to the Sennheiser that's missing from the Shure. Now that little bit of high frequency gives more presence to the sound. Here's the second phrase going up to the B flat, first on the Sennheiser and then on the SM58. Again, the SM58 sounds thin, not enough body for a studio recording of trombone, certainly unless you do a lot of processing to bring out certain frequencies. Okay, so that's enough of the Shure. Next, let's listen to the lower end condenser mic, the Audix CX-101. Here are the 4 E flats at the beginning of my test here. And let's compare those to the Neumann TLM 193. Now, by the way, use your ears, not your eyes, for the final evaluation of any of this. I'm putting the frequency graph up there for some visual, but I don't want it to distract from the sound. All right? You can always go back and see and analyze what's happening, but what you hear is the most important thing. And regarding the graphs, the peaks you see are all the overtones of the notes. It gives you a little sense of the frequency response of the mic and the relative volume of the individual overtones that that mic is able to reproduce. Here are those 4 beginning notes. The Neumann has a fuller body to it. The Audix is thinner. And the difference is a $500 Audax compared to a $1,500 Neumann. Now listen to them side by side, so to speak. Do you hear the difference? The Neumann just sounds fuller. Not something you can easily see from the graph, but it's obvious from the audio. At least it is on my end. Now let's hear the Coles ribbon mic. One thing I was reminded of when I recorded it, the Coles isn't a great, close, intimate mic like the Neumanns are. You know, up close, the Coles loses some of its high range, and it sounds a little tubby. So unlike the other mics, I recorded the Coles about a foot out from the mic. Here's the second phrase played on the Coles, starting on that low B flat. Here's the same phrase on the Neumann 193. And here's that phrase on the Neumann U89, the most expensive mic of the three. I still prefer the fuller body of the 193. I think that the lower range of the Coles is just not as clear as the other tool. The Coles sounds better in the high range, but I still prefer the 193. Okay, let's bring in the Neumann M149. This is my favorite mic. I play it almost every day. It's what you hear me record it on. And let's compare it to the other Neumanns. Okay, here's the U89 we just listened to. This is on the first phrase starting on that high E flat. Here's that same basic phrase on the Neumann 193. And that phrase on the M149, again, the most expensive mic of all of them. Now, throughout this video, I've been mentioning costs, in part just to give you some perspective, but, you know, again, the most important criteria is what you hear within the mics in your budget. Now, I know the sound of the 149 so well because I use it almost every day, so I admit it's hard to be objective on this mic. It's my recorded sound, but what I hear is a fuller, richer sound with a nice, airy high end to it. Now, when I record with the mic, sometimes I cut off the top end or I'll roll off some of the bottom in order to produce a little bit of a different character, or maybe to help it cut through better on the tracks. And at the end of this video, I'm going to play you an excerpt of a piece I produced called Force of Nature, in which I worked really hard with this mic to create a very intimate presence for the solo trombone using some various processing and some studio tricks. All right, last, let's compare the pianissimo note at the very end of everything I played, and let's do it between 5 of the mics. When I recorded this, I played as soft as possible, and I even let some lip buzzing and other playing artifacts to come through at the very end because I wanted to hear how well the mics pick up on those very subtle elements. And this is probably the most subtle comparison of any of the mics in this video. Now, I did increase the gain on all of them for this demonstration between like 10 and I think 14 dB, which is a lot, but otherwise you wouldn't hear the recording very well. They were very, very, very soft. So let's take a listen. I hear the same characteristics in each of these mics that I heard earlier. For example, the Sennheiser sounds flat. The Audix is a bit thin. The Neumanns pick up the artifacts better, and especially you can really hear the mechanics of my playing with the Neumann 149, the big boy. Okay, that was a lot, right? And we could have done more. I mean, we could listen to more mics and different combinations and juxtapositions, but I think you've got the idea. And my hope for you after watching this is that you have a little bit of a different perspective on characteristics of mics and what to listen for and how to listen to them a little bit better so that you can pick out a mic that really works for you. My perspective on this is definitely going to be different than yours, and I feel a little bit self-conscious that, you know, I'm denigrating some of these good mics, but it's because of my perspective, and I've spent, you know, decades with really nice studio quality mics. If I had handed you a Sennheiser and said, here's your new mic, and you'd plugged it in and played with it, you'd probably say, that's great, thank you, I got a great mic. And you would. It's a matter of perspective and what your ear is leading you to want. And that leads me to the last point, which is how do you find the mic without just making a gamble and investing in a high-end mic? What I did early on is I went to a New York studio rental place and I loaded up my car with microphones and mic pre's, and at the time a lot of outboard equipment like compressors and reverb units and delays. And I went back to my house and I had a good friend who was a recording engineer, and we spent the day and night just A-Bing everything and hearing what this mic sounds with this preamp and just coming up with what I thought was the right sound. You don't have to go quite that crazy, but if you buy a mic, buy it from somebody where you can take it back if you don't like it, and just make sure that it's in, you know, mint condition when you bring it back. But these are not cheap toys, so you want to make sure that when you invest, you're investing in something that's going to work for you. I thank you for watching all of this and sticking with me. I'm going to take you out on what I said earlier, which was a tune I just wrote called Force of Nature. Didn't just write it, I just remixed it actually and remastered. And listen for the presence that I've got in one of the last sections where the trombone has a very interesting presence about it, and not only what I did with that, but how I carved out underneath it. And again, I owe a lot of it to my trusty Neumann M149. So thank you, best of luck, and let me know what you find. Oh, and sign up for altobone.com and get the full res audio file.